We just heard Mike Love and Dean Torrence performing Fun, Fun, Fun for Kodak. This rare commercial jingle is just one of 23 unique recordings featured on a compilation CD called Dean Torrence and Friends, The Teammates. One of the producers of this compilation is no stranger to this program. It's David Beard, editor of Endless Summer Quarterly magazine. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, we have to have you on to talk about this release. I should mention it's on Omnivore Recordings, and it's really fascinating stuff. It spans a long stretch of time, and putting this together, this is an archival release featuring some material that's never been heard before and some that's been out of the public arena for a long time. How did this whole project come about?
Me. If you think back to 2017, the first time I met Brad Rosenberger at Omnivore back in 2008 in Culver City, I believe, at the release party for the Dennis Wilson Sony Legacy Pacific Ocean Blue Bamboo release. And he's a great guy. And he's all about rare stuff and things like that. So in 2017, I was finally able to kind of nudge Dean in the direction of releasing the Filet of Soul Rejected Masters, and we did that on Omnivore. So I've been in Brad's ear for, many years now. And then last year, Omnivore worked with me on the California music release. So this was something that kind of started the spring of 2021, where I just was talking to Dean and talking to Brad and seeing if there was something Dean had that maybe people hadn't heard or something like that. And, of course, most of it people have heard. But so it kind of started out with, wouldn't it be great if we could take all the Mike and Dean material that was done and put it all in one collection? So that was kind of the genesis of the idea. From there, Dean went to his storage and pulled out a bunch of tapes. A lot of the stuff was from the Silver Summer Anniversary album that's already been released on CD a number of times. So after we had everything transferred, we thought, well, we don't want to do that, because I kind of dug up and I thought, geez, it's already been out. This stuff's already been out. That Silver Summer stuff already been out there 4 times.
Right.
And I thought, it's been a while. I think it's been 10 years since its last iteration, but still, it's people have it. And I thought, I really want to do something unique and special. How do we get there? So I kept at it and kind of kept bothering everybody and said, let's get, something that starts back in the 60s. What is there that we can work with? And I've always liked summertime. But that too has been in different iterations when it was originally released. Initially in '65 by Our Gang, which this collection includes, where Dean co-produced the track with Gary Zeekley, and then the B-side was Theme from Leon's Garage. And I thought, isn't that strange? It's not Theme from Joe's Garage, because it was recorded at Joe Osborne's garage, and that became a story in and of itself. And Dean wanted to tell that story. He was very keen on talking about working with Joe Osborne, Leon Russell, Larry Knechtel, and Mickey Jones. These famous, they weren't, in quotes, the wrecking crew, but they might as well have been. I mean, they were
Right.
The Quill, right? I mean, they were the top of, if you were lucky enough to work with them, you knew that whatever you were working on would come out brilliant. So this was a really interesting kind of idea that Dean had. And if you've read Dean's book, Surf City, the Jan and Dean story, that he published in 2016, throughout that book, Dean uses the word buddies and teammates or team on the same team often.
Yes.
So he came up with the title, and it made perfect sense because of that book. And that's who he is. He's always, talking about all the interviews he does, or if he's talking about music from a certain era or anything, he's always talking about the people he works with and the fun that he had or how the project came to fruition. It's always Dean and someone else. So whether it's him doing a graphic art design, or, you know, he talks about how that happened. If it's him working with somebody in the studio, he's always talking about others in any of his stories. It's never, well, this is what I did and this is how it's never like that. It's always about others. So that's kind of Dean ended up kind of providing us with the compass. And from there, they're really the only place in the collection that doesn't do that is, for those who saw the Dead Man's Curve TV movie, which initially premiered in 78 and then ran again in 79, there were songs from that I thought were interesting because they only ever appeared in the car radio, if you will, in the background. They were background songs. And that was a situation where it was, in fact, just Dean. You know, it was Dean singing the vocals, and it was old school songs that obviously he and Jan had been influenced by. And those songs were A Teenager in Love, I Only Have Eyes for You, Get a Job, and One Summer Night. And I just thought, you know, they've never been on CD. So that was another thing where I kind of pushed for those. Those are the four songs where Dean is just, it's Dean and he's not working with someone else per se. But the rest of it, he's working with somebody else. And it's just fascinating because when I you know, I as a collector, as a longtime Jan and Dean fan, I had most of these recordings. But to have, thanks to Lee Dempsey, my good buddy, who's the business side of Endless Summer Quarterly, he had Summertime, the Our Gang version, the theme from Leon's Garage, which is the B-side to that single. And then I had the Louisiana Man with Session. I had Session with the song. And then the Snowflakes on Laughing Gravy's Whiskers has never been released anywhere. And so I loved the idea that we could kind of get that out there, and you know, with Vegetables, and then not only from the Laughing Gravy version, but not just that, but with Vegetables, we were also able to provide an alternate recording of it, which to me sounds, the reason it's an alternate is just happened to be on the tape. I don't think it was meant to be kept, because you can hear it. There's a phone ringing in the background, and at the end, some little kids are running around laughing. And I think that's why that never came out. But I liked it because it was an alternate version. I liked it because they kept recording. You hear the phone ring and they keep recording. It just keeps on. And I just thought, well, that kind of plays to the oddity and or the playfulness that Vegetables represents.
Well, I can tell you that I certainly didn't have these recordings, so this was all mostly new to me. And this is a good way to sort of, dip your toe a little bit into, what Dean was doing after Jan and Dean, including stuff from the 60s, but right up through the 80s.
And I think most Jan and Dean fans are familiar with the Mike and Dean material. Most longtime fans would be.
Right.
And I would imagine that most longtime fans would recognize the four songs I mentioned from the Dead Man's Curve soundtrack as from that, TV movie. But, so it was really kind of our goal to make it different.
There is a song on this CD that I wanted to play, actually, and it was a song that's new to me, and it features Dean, Terry Melcher, and Bruce Johnston, and it's called Just Keep It Up. This sounds to me like a lost hit single.
Well, it's interesting. As I'm sure you saw in the liner notes in my interview with Dean, it's one of those weird circumstances where they all just kind of, these guys were buddies, and Bruce had kind of inconspicuously joined Dean as one of the, in quotes, legendary mass surfers back in the mid-'70s, for the material that Dean was putting out, re-recordings of, like, Gonna Hustle You and that type of thing. And so they were always just working together. Again, this just goes back to that buddy concept. So these, 74, 75, that's who Dean's working with at the time. He's just doing his graphic thing, but kind of on the side when time allows, popping into the studio and doing something. And these songs were new to me, too. I had heard them on a cassette that I had buried somewhere decades ago. And I just so when I heard them again, I thought, okay, wait a minute, where do I know this from? How do I know this? So I listened to it, and just hearing it remastered like this and having them sound so great right off of a master reel was just wonderful to me, and it was so eye-opening. And it's a very Caribbean type song. When I hear it and I listen to it and I know when it was recorded, I think, man, had Bruce still been in the Beach Boys, this could have very well have been a song for them. You know, it's a, as you say, it doesn't have hit written all over it, but it definitely is a good, strong recording.
We've been talking to David Beard, editor of Endless Summer Quarterly magazine, and we just heard the Beach Boys live at Carnegie Hall with a storming version of You Need a Mess of Help to Stand Alone. We've been talking a lot about this Dean Torrence and Friends release called The Teammates, but we're going to pivot for a moment to another archival release that's coming out soon from the Beach Boys called Sail on Sailor. What can you tell us about this box set?
It's amazing. I've been listening to the tracks now, all of them, for several weeks, and it's great. It's I think the most important thing for listeners to understand, and what makes these two, the Carl and the Passions album so tough, accompanying Holland, what makes those two albums together so special is this is when the Beach Boys had Blondie Chaplin and Ricky Fataar as group members. Bruce was gone at that point from the group, and although he's on Marcella, and then he's on another one at the time, I can't remember. But before he'd left, he had already laid vocals down, so that's why he's on some tracks. But this is a time in the Beach Boys' lives where Carl Wilson was kind of running things creatively. And he brought in this influence, Blondie and Ricky, from the group The Flame. And Carl had actually produced an album for The Flame in 1970 that did not do well. And in my interview with John Parks in the fall 2022 edition of ESQ, and talking about that album, and the reason why Ricky and Blondie ended up being members is because he thinks that Carl felt guilty and or responsible for that album not being successful. And that's really wasn't on Carl's shoulders, because that was a failed thing on the behalf of the marketing and the publicity that was put behind the release. But Carl felt responsible nonetheless. And so Carl, out of more, as much as all the Beach Boys loved rhythm and blues, but Carl was, first and foremost the guy who was into any Motown act. You name it, he was into it. Aretha Franklin, Stevie Wonder, on and on and on the list went. And Carl loved rhythm and blues. And so for Carl to add Ricky and Blondie to the Beach Boys dynamic, to him, it just made sense. And when you listen to the live recording from Carnegie Hall, and for those people who already have the 1973 in concert album, you know that Ricky and Blondie brought a different form of energy and electricity to the live performances. And that's what's one of the brilliant things about this upcoming release, Sail on Sailor, is that you have the Carnegie show, and it's amazing. It's just more Ricky and Blondie, which just placates and adds to a deeper appreciation of what Carl and the Passions, more so than Holland, but the Carl and the Passions So Tough album is, because it's Carl Wilson leading a group of band members and letting them all kind of get their funk on.
I was just going to say, because the group, The Flame, are from South Africa, so it's interesting that the Beach Boys, obviously the Beach Boys are thought of as like a very white group, and here they're integrating in 1972. Yeah,
and if you, I don't know who I would play these when this comes out, who I would play it for, but I can't wait for people so let's say those who bought Sounds of Summer or bought Feel Flows these last two expanded big sets and are, kind of new to the world of the Beach Boys. I can't wait for them to hear this stuff and explore it and discover it. And I hope they absorb it in a way that, I hope they love rhythm and blues so they can get into it, because it is so different. There are recordings on these albums that are similar to what people might anticipate. But if they listen to the live show, they'll get a really true sense of what the Beach Boys were, who the Beach Boys were, and what they were about in that period in their careers. And I think that's what's great about this set, is that you have the live shows to listen to, and you can go, oh, gosh, listen to this, and listen to how they were performing live. And then you can go back to the albums, Carl and the Passions or Holland, and go, man, oh man, especially Carl and the Passions, because you have Hold On Dear Brother. Right. And there's some really rooted issues in that song. That song is written because Brother Fatar had left and gone back to South Africa, and he was depressed. He really struggled with drugs and alcohol abuse. And so the Hold On Dear Brothers, they wanted him to stick around, and it's poignant. There's a lot of history there, and it's different history. So I can't wait for people to discover it. I hope, like I said, I hope they absorb it. I hope that they hear it, and then, because most people will be able to go, okay, I'll listen to this Carnegie Hall show, right? Most people know what Carnegie Hall is. Sure. Most people would say, okay, this is the Beach Boys live, and they can put it on and listen and understand what the Beach Boys were doing with their catalog of greatest hits, how they were treating those songs, and how they were trying to evolve as a musical act.
So before we go, because we're going to run out of time shortly here, but you're going to be back. You'll be back again, hopefully next month. But tell us very quickly about where people can go to catch up with Endless Summer Quarterly and subscribe and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, ESQUARTERLY.com, ESQuarterly.com. And where they can just Google search Endless Summer Quarterly, and it'll be able to take them right to the site. And there's magazine subscription button at the top that'll take them right to that page. And there's ESQ Store. So if you just want to buy a single edition, you just say, let's say somebody wants to learn more about the Carl and the Passions album, they can look at the fall 2022 issue. We just went to press with our winter edition, which is dedicated a celebration of life and memory of Billy Hinchy. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of really interesting stories about Billy in that magazine. But I could have done 10 volumes on Billy. So it was really difficult. It was a real challenge for me to just to know where to stop and how to get just to say, okay, I'm going to publish this and hope it means something to those that read it. But there's a lot of really cool stuff that's going on in the Beach Boys world right now, which is in the news section of the new issue. So, but that's the easy way. Go to esquarterly.com or just type it in your whichever web browser you use. Just type in Endless Summer Quarterly, and I'm sure you'll be able to find it.
David, I want to thank you so much for coming on the program again, and we're going to close out with an unreleased song on this forthcoming Sail On Sailor box set. It's a song written by Dennis called Carry Me Home. And David, we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
Take care.